Swordsoul was released in Master Duel on May 9, 2022. Despite receiving little support since its release, it has seen consistent competitive success for over a year thanks to its resilience, power, adaptability, alongside a very enthusiastic player base. In July 2023, the secret pack for Swordsoul, Guardian of the Sacred Summit, was finally released. It brought a new wave of people who were interested in the deck and could reliably build it without spending too many crafting points. To welcome this new generation of players, I and a few others in the Swordsoul community in the Master Duel Meta Discord have come together to create an in-depth guide for Swordsoul Tenyi, featuring basic and advanced things you should know about the deck. You'll learn that the deck is far more than just Chixiao Baronne Pass, and see combo lines that you didn't even think were possible in some hands. Without further ado, this is... Deck building. This seems like one of the most basic parts of any deck, but I can tell you now, that's not necessarily the case for Swordsoul. I have seen a lot of lists while playing Master Duel and browsing Master Duel meta that are on suboptimal ratios for both the main deck and extra deck, and they're still able to succeed due to the nature of this format. Being able to win games is a good thing already, but improving on your deck list is crucial to maintain and increase your level of success, while also helping your growth as a player. So let's start with the main deck. First, we have the Swordsoul monsters. They all share the effect to special summon a level 4 token that's a tuner, and a beneficial effect when they're sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon. Keep in mind that while these tokens are on the field, you can only synchro summon from the extra deck. First off, we have Moye. Moye can summon a token on normal or special summon by revealing a Swordsoul card or worm monster in your hand and draws you a card when synced off. She is one of the best starters in the deck. In simpler hands, you are going to want to summon her due to the ease of generating a token with her and netting you an additional card when you make something like a Chixiao. Run 3. Taya can summon a token by banishing a Swordsoul card or a worm monster in your graveyard and sends a Swordsoul card or worm monster from the deck to the graveyard when synced off. At first glance, Taya is not as powerful as Moye because he needs something in the graveyard and he doesn't draw you a card. But in reality, he's more versatile than Moye due to him enabling the more explosive combos in the deck and synergizing with Tenyis and Swordsoul Emergence or Blackout a lot better. He's also an amazing top deck in a simplified game state. Don't underestimate what he's capable of. Run 2. Longwon can discard another Swordsoul card or worm monster from the hand to summon himself and a token, and deals 1200 burn damage when synced off. Longwon is an incredible card as he can get you to powerful synchro 10s like Baronne for early protection or Qixing for an extra draw. But that's not his only usage. Him being level 6 is also very convenient for Yazi when paired with Adhara, and that can help you play through interruptions more efficiently going second. Run 2 as it's currently semi-limited in Master Duel, but 3 if he ever comes off the ban list. While not a Swordsoul card by name, Incredible Ecclesia's name doesn't lie. During the main phase, you can tribute her to summon any Swordsoul monster from hand or deck. This effect is even more potent going second because she can special summon herself from the hand if your opponent controls more monsters than you do. Her being a level 4 tuner also comes up going second when paired with Moye or Taya, so you can get to Baxia without triggering any effects beforehand, but we'll get more into that later. Of course, she's not as efficient of a starter as Moye or Taya due to being vulnerable to Ash, but that does not change the fact that she still gets you to your Swordsoul engine. Run 2 to 3. The Swordsoul monsters are certainly powerful and are the main ones that will facilitate your synchro plays in order to generate more advantage for you. But they aren't the only ones doing the heavy lifting for the deck. Let's move on to the Tenyis. All of the main deck Tenyis have an effect to special summon themselves from the hand if you control no face-up effect monsters, and this does count set monsters as well. And a different effect if you banish them from the hand or graveyard if you control a face-up non-effect monster. Let's start off with undoubtedly the strongest one of them all, Ashuna. Ashuna can banish itself from the graveyard to summon any Tenyi from your deck. This includes Vishuda when going second to break boards, or Adhara going first for follow-up. When paired with a Vishuda or Adhara in hand, it allows you to bridge to your Swordsoul engine because Adhara, being a level 1 tuner, plus Vishuda, a level 7 worm non-tuner, equals Chi-Shao. Keep in mind that after you use this effect to summon, you'll be locked into special summoning worm monsters for the rest of the turn, so no Ecclesia or Barone. New players tend to forget this lock exists, but this generally does not matter that much, since our worm synchro 10s are still amazing. Run 3. The second one we're going to talk about is Vishuda. It can be banished from your hand or graveyard to target a card on your opponent's field and return it to their hand. This makes it one of our best cards going second, since it can bait out interruptions or even remove floodgates. Run 2 to 3. The third one is Adhara. While not as versatile as Ashuna or threatening as Vishuda, Adhara makes up for those traits by giving you a very important thing: follow-up. I'll be talking more about follow-up later, but what you need to know now is that Adhara can add back your banished worms. So you can add back a banished Moye, Longwan, or even Protoss if you happen to banish them off of Taya or Chi-Shao. Adhara, being a level 1 tuner, also comes up in lines where you want to make Xiaofeng, or even Synchro 10s if you modulate its level with Emergence. It frankly doesn't get enough credit for what it can do. Run 3. While the previous 3 are pretty much mandatory in every list, there are other Tenyis that you might want to consider as well, especially if you're running Heavenly Dragon Circle. First one is Shadana, a level 4 Tenyi. If a non-effect monster is destroyed, you can banish Shadana from your hand or graveyard to summon that destroyed monster back and pop one monster on the field non-targeting. Note that this does not include your Swordsoul tokens. Shadana is good in the sense that it turns Monk into an interruption. If you're going second, you can special summon Shadana, link it into Monk, and threaten to trade with a monster on your opponent's board by crashing into it. This is especially valuable as an interruption, as Shadana's effect to reborn Monk and then destroy an opponent's monster happens during the damage step if the Monk is destroyed by battle, which will be immune from being interacted with a wide variety of cards and effects. Going first, you can set Blackout to turn Blackout plus Monk into 3 pops. It being level 4 can also help it be a good synchro material with a Swordsoul token. These situations don't come up often, but they still give you pretty good value. Another level 4 Tenyi worth considering is Mapura. A mostly more defensive option than Shadana, Mapura is also a level 4 non-tuner Tenyi monster. Whilst its primary use in the deck, like Shadana, is that it is a level 4 body that can synergize with Heavenly Dragon Circle, Vessel, and Ashuna, it also has a couple of useful interactions compared to Shadana. If your opponent attempts to target a non-effect monster with any card or effect, usually your Swordsoul tokens once you've summoned them, but also sometimes Monk, you can banish Mapura from your hand or graveyard to negate the activation of that card or effect and destroy it. Whilst not being a situation that comes up too frequently, it being a fire attribute monster rather than a water attribute monster like Shadana means that in any situation where you are using a Shuna Engrave to summon your level 4 Tenyi to synchro summon into Boxia, it will allow you to target 2 cards on the field to shuffle into the deck rather than 1. The main thing to consider when deciding on whether to run Shadana or Mapura is when trying to consider the way you build the deck in general. Shadana is inherently a proactive card, whereas Mapura is primarily a defensive card, unless being used to summon Boxia. Sometimes Shadana will be the better card in any given situation, and sometimes Mapura will be better. Run one of either Shadana or Mapura, but never both. For our last main deck in-engine monster, we have Arch Nemesis Protoss. This douchebag is both a blessing and a curse for the deck. Once per turn, it can declare any attribute on the field and destroy all monsters on the field with that same attribute. After that, until the end of your opponent's turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that same attribute. In most cases, you're going to be calling Dark since A, that's one of the most common types, and B, Protoss cannot be destroyed by card effects, so it can't blow itself up. This is an incredibly unfair card, can win games on its own, and is widely considered to be the thing that carries Swordsoul to the top, despite the deck still performing relatively well in the TTG without Protoss. Ban this card for sure, I don't really care. Anyway, run one since you're usually searching it off of Emergence or Heavenly Dragon Circle. Now we move on to the spells and traps. Swordsoul Emergence is the archetypal search and one of the best cards in the deck, given the incredible flexibility it provides through its various effects. Upon use, it lets us search for any one of our Swordsoul monsters to add from deck to hand, which is already a good effect, and can potentially get even better. In fact, if we use it while we control any synchro monster, we'll be able to search for any worm monster in our deck instead, granting us the ability to access both our Tenyis and even Protoss if needed. On top of the great consistency boost that it provides to the overall strategy, It has a second ability which can be used when the card gets banished, giving us the opportunity to either increase or decrease by 1 the level of any worm monster on our field until the end of the turn. This is particularly important for some of the combo lines we'll showcase later. Needless to say, run it at 3. We've already mentioned it a couple of times prior through the course of this video, but now it's time to look a little bit more in depth in Heavenly Dragon Circle. It's a quick play spell that, similarly to Emergence, gives us the ability to search for a worm monster from a deck, but at the cost of tributing a worm monster on our side of the field. On a surface level, it may not seem as good as the aforementioned Emergence, but it interacts with us in a very interesting way. More on that later. As a secondary effect, if we control a non-effect monster, we can banish Circle from our graveyard to add any Tenyi named card from our deck to our hand. We can only use one of the 2 effects in a single turn. This effect can come up when using it as a fodder to pop for Boxia in some lines. Giving us fodder in hand for our Swordsoul monsters are good follow-up in general. Phenomenal card. Run 2 copies at least. Next up, we've got Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. To summarize how good the card is, I'd like to quote a frequent Swordsoul player in the Master Duel meta Discord. If anyone asks why we play Vessel in Swordsoul, the only right answer is, you don't see Mathmech play their deck without Circular, do you? Jokes aside, Vessel is a foolish burial for any worm in your deck, plus a Tenyi Surge if you control a non-effect monster. This card allows you to open up certain combos and or bait interactions such as Ash Blossom, but most importantly, Nibiru and Effect Veiler. Run 2. Next spell we're going to talk about is not a card specific to the deck itself, but it's almost synonymous with it, since Swordsoul is one of the decks that can better use it and doesn't feel the drawbacks as much as other popular strategies. Pot of Desires. For the cost of banishing 10 cards face down from the top of your deck, you get to draw 2 cards. Aside from the obvious power of just netting yourself a +1, the costs of doing so are negligible in comparison with the gains. With the usage of Desires, there's an idea of risk attached to it, and while you can't always prevent some of the negative consequences, we feel like the pros outweigh those drawbacks and numbers support that idea. Some examples? Banishing both long ones in a 40 card deck sits at around a 7% chance, the same as banishing both copies of Taya. Banishing all 3 Moyes is under 2%, and these numbers get even lower when you're running a higher card count. In the context of our deck, using Desires is also a powerful card that demands attention from your opponent whenever it is in play. Going first is a prime Ash target and can help you get rid of a possibly annoying interaction from stopping your plays, but also it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent going second, since letting it resolve leaves them to deal with a 7 card hand from one of the best decks at breaking boards and OTK with the sheer force of Engine, so definitely not a situation you would want to be put in. Additionally, while drawing cards is obviously the important part of the effect, the banished ones can come in handy in conjunction with one of our most powerful monsters like we'll see later in the video. We feel like these are all good enough reasons to make it not only a mandatory inclusion for our deck, but also a card to be run at 3 copies. Last but not least, Swordsoul Blackout is the only trap card we're running in our strategy, and it's a powerful one at that. On activation, we target 1 worm monster on our side of the field and 2 cards on the opponent's side, and when the effect resolves, we destroy all 3 cards selected, since it only needs to target the worm monster in the field in order for the destruction effect to resolve properly. But we can also chain Circle to it in order to net us a free card in the process. It also has a second effect when banished, that lets you summon a level 4 Swordsoul token on the field similar to the ones we get with our Swordsoul monsters, allowing you to access an additional token on the field either via banishing with Taya or with Chixiao, and it's great to potentially further our plays. Run 1 copy. Now we move on to the extra deck. This is where most of the deck's endboard power gets concentrated. First we got the links. Monk of the Tenyi, despite having no effects, is one of the best cards in the extra deck because he's a link 1. This means that you can immediately link off a special summon Tenyi to make him. Him being a non-effect monster is also beneficial because it allows more Tenyis to summon themselves from the hand and allow them to get their other effects from the hand or graveyard. It's an incredibly valuable card in the grind game too when you want to cycle through your Tenyis. Run 3. Next up, we have his sister, Shaman of the Tenyi. Once returned, you can discard a card for her to revive a worm monster from the graveyard. The downside is that for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate non-Tenyi monster effects from the extra deck. Her other effect is that when a non-effect monster attacks, she can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. Her revival effect is still pretty good despite the downside, and she can help you play through interruptions with an awkward hand going first and still be able to end on at least a synchro 8. Going second, She helps with putting extra damage on the board sometimes if you like to revive a monk or even a Chengi. She's a good card when she comes up, but don't expect her to win you games on her own. Run 1. Now we can get to the real meat of the extra deck, the synchros. We start off strong with Yazi, Evil of the Yangtze. The evil part is accurate because this card is very foul. First, it cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. Second, it can target a Yangtze monster on the field and one card your opponent controls and pop them both. Third, when it's destroyed, it can summon any worm monster from your deck in defense position. It being untargetable already makes it incredibly hard to deal with for your opponent when going second, and it can potentially trade 1 for 2 in terms of interactions, because your opponent needs to be able to deal with the worm that you will summon off of Yazi. It can be a Taya, a Moye, or even a Shuna. You can easily make Yazi with Long 1 plus Adhara, or Taya plus a level 3 token modulated with Emergence, but it's usually the former. Sometimes we even make Yazi going first because Boxia can pop it, so you get further plays or something like Impermanence and still be able to end on 2 synchros. This is a mandatory inclusion for how much pressure it can put up. Run 1. Let's move on to the level 8 synchros, of which there are plenty. First we got the Grandmaster himself, Qishao. On Synchro Summon, Qishao can add to your hand or banish one Swordsoul card from your deck. As a quick effect, you can banish a Swordsoul card or worm monster from your hand or graveyard, then target one other monster on the field and negate its effects. However, you can only use one effect of Qishao per turn. You're usually searching for another layer to your endboard with them, like Long 1 or Blackout. Emergence is also a valid option as it can grab your Protoss. Searching for follow-up is a good option as well, so you don't have to commit too much to the board and risk losing to Nibiru. Run 2 for the grind game. Now we have, in my opinion, the best monster in your extra deck, Boxia. On Synchro Summon, it can target cards on the field up to the number of different attributes of worm monsters used for a Synchro Summon, and return them to the deck. You can also target one card on your field and a level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard, destroy that card on the field and special summon the monster from the graveyard back. Note that both of these effects are not a hard once per turn. This means that Boxia is one of your best cards at cleaning up your opponent's board going second, especially since returning to the deck is one of the best forms of removal. Its revival effect comes up frequently for both going first and second, so you can revive Adhara, Moye, Taya, or Ecclesia for further single plays. Despite this, I've seen some Swordsoul pilots underestimate this card's potential and only run this at 1. Do not make the same mistake. You can easily go through 1 to 2 on turn 1 under some lines, and you need at least one more so you can break through the opponent's board on the crackback. Run at least 2. The third Synchro 8 we'll be talking about is Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. When your opponent activates a monster effect, Berserker can banish it. When it destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it will gain that destroyed monster's attack and be able to attack another monster. This is both a defensive and offensive option. Back in Tier 0 format, we made this so we have insurance against common threatening hand traps in tier elements, such as Kelbeck or Half-Miss. The special part is that we can make this without even using on-field effects or our normal summon, so it bolstered our defense against tier a lot. That's not the only matchup it's good against though, as being able to banish monsters is still a deadly effect against something like Bestials. Its offensive capabilities are also frightening, as it can sometimes allow you to OTK due to its attack gaining effect. One of its downsides is that it sort of conflicts with Protoss, especially when you have to call Dark with it. But that won't change the fact that Berserker is a great boss monster. Run 1. Up next, the only Synchro 9 that we need, Chaofeng. Chaofeng can apply continuous effect while it's on the field, which is your opponent cannot activate monster effects that share the same attribute as the Yangzings that were used to make Chaofeng. In most cases, you're going to be summoning this using Boxia and Adhara. Since Boxia is a light, it prevents your opponent from activating light effects, which includes Nibiru. When it's destroyed, you can add any tuner monster from your deck. This can include more hand traps like Ash, or follow-up like Ecclesia. And when a monster your opponent controls is destroyed, Chaofeng can summon a worm monster from your deck with the same attribute as that destroyed monster, so you can get any of your worms into rotation. Under the right format, Chaofeng is an insane card, already being able to majorly hamper decks like Pearly, Exo Sisters, and Mathmech. I've seen a few pilots opt to cut this card, which is straight up incorrect due to the volatile nature of Master Duel's best of 1 format, meaning that Nib is always a looming threat. Run 1. Let's move on to the Synchro 10s. First up, we got undoubtedly the most broken of them all, Baronne de Fleur. If you played against any Synchro deck, you've probably seen her. Once on the field, when a card or effect is activated, Baronne can negate that activation, and destroy it. Once per turn, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. During your standby phase, you can target a level 9 or lower monster in your graveyard, return Barone to the extra deck, and if you do, summon the targeted monster. 3 amazing effects on a generic level 10. If you can establish Barone early with something like Longwan in hand, you should most likely be doing that to prevent Nibiru. She's also capable of recruiting Taya from the graveyard, which is insane for follow-up. Barone is definitely a powerful synchro, but her biggest issue is that she isn't a worm, and that conflicts with Ashuna. By the end of the video, I hope you realize why this is crucial, especially considering the Tenyi lines are some of the best lines in the deck. Regardless, run one. Next up, the Supreme Sovereign Tenyi. He has a passive effect on the field to buff himself up by 100 attack and defense for every banished card while reducing your opponent's monster stats by the same amount. If he would be destroyed by card effect, you can just banish a card from your graveyard instead, so he synergizes very well with Blackout. If a card is banished, he'll banish a card from your opponent's field and graveyard non-targeting. He is one of our best OTK options, and answer against harder to remove threats like Avramax or Lady Labyrinth, which can't be targeted. He is also a very good reason to run Desires, since it would buff him by 1000 each time. Him being hard to remove and always being a threat that requires immediate attention makes him worth the inclusion in every list. Run 1. On the other side of the coin, we have the Sinister Sovereign, Qixing Longyuan. If your opponent special summons a monster, Qixing can banish it and deal 1200 damage. The same goes for Spell Trap activation or effect, and these are 2 separate effects. As a bonus, if you synchro summon another worm monster while he's on the field, he draws you a card. Qixing is one of your best endboard options when going first, especially when you're worm locked from Ashuna and can't make Barone. In some formats, Qixing is probably even better than Barone due to how turn-ending his banishing effects can be against threats like Dragon Link or Pearly. Run 1. Now you have been keeping count, we only have 14 extra deck monsters so far. These 14 are non-negotiable. You have to play them, which means there's only one flex spot. I'll be going through these quickly so you can decide on what to include, and note that these are not all the options you can try. Psychic End Punisher, a level 11 synchro that you usually make with a level 7 Tenyi and a level 4 tuner. As long as your life points are lower than your opponent's, it's unaffected by your opponent's activated card effects. Once per turn, by paying 1000 life points, it can banish one card you control and one card your opponent controls. At the start of the battle phase, it can also gain attack equal to the difference between you and your opponent's life points. The unaffected part of the card makes it a hard to remove threat for your opponent and can potentially swing the entire game in your favor. The third copy of Boxia. The third one sometimes comes up, especially when you go through 2 on turn 1 to get to Chaofeng and to bridge from Taya to Moye via Baxia's revival effect. Having the comfort of going through 1 or 2 and still having more for the next turn is worth it. Dragite, a generic level 8 synchro that can negate any spell trap activation or effect once per turn if you have a water monster in your graveyard. It synergizes especially well with Moye and can help you against Evenly Match if you're unable to end on Barone. Danglong, a generic level 5 synchro that is usually made with Adhara plus Moye or Taya. The only effect you need to worry about here is that it can send anyone from the deck to the graveyard to modulate its level. While the deck doesn't run any main deck Yang Zings, Danglong does serve a unique purpose in that it helps you play through Imperm on Moye if you also open Ashuna. More on that line later. Lanforinkus, a generic Link 2. This sort of achieves the same purpose as Monk as a non-effect monster, but has the added benefit of being generic, so you can link off a used Qishao and another body so that your Tenyis are alive again. It can also help you get rid of Eevee off your board when that comes up. So that's pretty much all I have in terms of deck building. If you like some example lists, the regulars in the Swordsoul channel have come up with a few for you, and these lists have worked very well for them, including myself. Now let's move on to the next portion of the video. Now we have do's and don'ts. This section will be about tips and tricks you can do with the deck and what not to do when playing the deck. So let's start with what you should do. Chain blocking. With chain blocking, we refer to the ability of ordering in which way the effects of a chain resolves in order to insulate our plays from additional interruptions from our opponent. For example, if we want to protect Chishao's effect to search for a card from our deck from being negated by Ash Blossom, we can chain block it with the effect of either Moye or Taya that we use for a summon, like Chainlink 1 Chishao, Chainlink 2 Moye or Taya, or if we are trying to force out an opponent's board and they have Baronne the Fleur on the field, we can chain block the effect of Boxia to spin away their card with one of our Swordsoul monsters we use for the summon, since they can only interact with the last link of said chain. In general, learning how to chain block your effects will be a crucial part of the Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay, so it's definitely something you should always take into consideration when thinking about your plays. Using Circle to dodge targeted negation. Like mentioned in the overview section of our spells and traps, Heavenly Dragon Circle interacts with us in an extremely favorable way, in fact being a quick play spell. We can chain this to our opponent trying to use a targeted effect on our monsters in order to dodge it, and to both add a monster and resolve our monster's effect on top. Targeted effects are the most common form of interaction in the game, and being able to run a versatile defensive card that also gives us the ability to progress our plays further is a phenomenal addition to the deck and one of the better cards overall in our arsenal. Aside from that, you can also use Circle to summon a worm monster from the deck if you tribute a non-effect monster. Despite the fact that its effects are negated, it's still worth it to do so under certain conditions. You can tribute a monk or a Swordsoul token while you already have something like Adhara on the field to summon Vishuddha for a Synchro 8. This is good because Adhara being on the field means you can't special summon Vishuddha from the hand normally. Alternatively, you can even summon Longyuan and make Yazi without ever using Longyuan's effect to summon from hand. These scenarios rarely come up, but it's good to keep them in mind regardless. Popping Yazi. As mentioned before, you can always use Yazi to pop itself and another card your opponent controls so that Yazi can summon a worm from the deck. But in the event where it ever gets negated or your opponent doesn't have a legal target on the field, you can pop it with Baronne or Boxia, or the funnier way, Calling Dark on Protoss while Yazi is on the field. Playing for follow-up. While the idea of putting up the biggest and strongest board possible is definitely alluring and can bring good results, emptying all the tank of resources is also a risky strategy that could end up backfiring. Cycling through resources and keeping them ready to be retrieved and used again is crucial to ensure that the longer games will tip in our favor whenever our initial board is not enough to close the game. Adhara is exceptionally good at recovering back pieces used for your combo lines, giving you guaranteed forms of follow-up and has great synergy with Chishao since we can banish any name we would like to recover and use Adhara to do so. Try and keep options available for you at any time. The more you can play your cards, the easier it will get to achieve victory. Bridging from Taya to Moye using Boxia. Being familiar with the capabilities of Boxia both going first and second, it's important to fully understand the options it opens up for us. For example, if we go first and are stuck using Taya as our normal summon, we can use it to go for Boxia, send Moye to the graveyard with Taya's second effect, then use Boxia's second effect to pop either itself or something more beneficial for us on the board, maybe a set Heavenly Dragon Circle for example, and then summon back the Moye from the graveyard and use her effect so that we can net us a draw and possibly some other extension to use or spend Boxia. Don't underestimate the power of this move. Level modulation. Albeit more niche in usage, being aware that the option to modulate the level of your worms thanks to emergence is crucial to access some of the most interesting and powerful plays of our deck. It is an integral part of the double 10 lines, which are some of our most powerful setups going first, or it can give us easy access to Yazi via Taya banishing emergence, especially effective going second. Analyze your position carefully and be on the lookout for these solutions. Learn the meta. Swordsoul doesn't aim to shut out the opponent with unreasonably large boards or a bevy of floodgates. Your primary goal when going first is to set up a modest board with follow-up to OTK the opponent on turn 3. As such, you'll need to use your interactions like Chishao, Chising, Baronne properly in order to get there. So always keep a lookout on the meta so you can choose which options to end on. Now we get on to the don'ts. Don't run these cards. This will be a very long section, so buckle up. First, we have Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, the original sin as far as common and suboptimal Swordsoul techs go. It's no longer seeing a significant amount of use as it was on the deck's release, but it still can't be overstated that you shouldn't run it. The fusion materials lower your consistency and you risk banishing them with desires. DPE and Verte also eat up your extra deck's flex spot and require you to cut an extra card on top, and Swordsoul doesn't tend to leave the extra bodies on board for Verte. Besides, we usually wormlock ourselves with a Shuna, so we can't even make Verte to begin with. DPE simply isn't as game-changing as it once was, nor worth the inclusion. Kashtira Fenrir. It's a highly splashable card that, with its ability to search a second copy and banishing effect necessitating the opponent use an interaction on it, can be incredibly impactful. However, in Swordsoul, it forces you to pick between using Fenrir or using your Tenyis. Due to the importance of the Tenyis, as seen in the rest of the guide, cards that conflict with them are generally not advisable. Other examples of powerful cards that can be difficult to run in this deck include Bistios and the Biru. Dimension Shifter. Both the Tenyis and your Swordsoul monster's effects gained from the synchro summoning require the graveyard to be accessible. While the deck does not immediately evaporate against such banishing effects, it is heavily nerfed, making these less than ideal. Pot of Prosperity or Extravagance. There are a number of issues with these, included but not limited to Swordsoul needs the extra deck, making dumping 6 problematic, doubly so with extra randomness. Both of them turn off your Moye and cheesing draws. Prosperity turns off your OTK ability, and most importantly, Desires has the same benefits as Extravagance with largely negligible downsides. White Aura Whale, Crimson Blader, and Ready Rose Dragon. All of them have niche usages, but will come up less often than other potential flex spot choices. Borolo Savage Dragon. Generally speaking, Monk will only be in your graveyard to be equipped on turn 3 onwards, defeating the purpose of the card in most cases. Moreover, even with Monk equipped, it's only providing a single Omni Negate. Virtual World QB Shenshen. A decent floodgate effect on a level that's a little awkward for the deck. If you're capable of making a 9, it's normally with Boxia and Adhara, at which point Chaofeng would be the superior choice. Baguska or Zeus. The deck is only ever in a position to make rank 4 XZs with very specific hands. Normally, when you have the cards that allow you to make them, for example Ecclesia when going second, or a level 4 Tenyi, you want to use those cards for other things. Note that Zeus, while not a standard option, is valid if you're running triple tactics talent and you're trying to take a Kashtira or Rysword and then Zeus your opponent's board. The Irish Swordsoul. Strong effects, but there are better cards to search with Shishao, namely Longwan, Blackout, or Emergence for Protoss or Follow-Up. The Golden Swordsoul. Very situational effect, and not worth the space for the shot at searching Ecclesia. Swordsoul Auspice Chunchun. Functionally, he's a worse version of Heavenly Dragon Circle. This level isn't exactly helpful either when dodging negation on Moye or Taya since you want to be making Qishao to then get to a level 10 with Longwan. The Abyss Dragon Swordsoul. The deck doesn't run field spells, leaving its best effect dead more often than not. Sick card, but mediocre card. Swordsoul Strife and Assessment. They're genuinely bad cards. Anything would be a better use of deck space. Blackout's the only Swordsoul trap you should run because it at least has a good effect. Swordsoul Sacred Summit. This is a common choice in less than average lists. Similarly to Iris, there are stronger cards to search off of Qishao. It doesn't serve to increase your consistency, and unless you open a very specific hand, won't increase the strength of your turn 1 endboard either. Tenyi Spirit Nahada. Very middling effect, the other 2 level 4 Tenyis are superior picks. And last but not least, Swordsoul Punishment. This is a future piece of support, but it's still generally not worth running. Searchable Banish sounds good on paper, but similarly to Iris, it's not worth searching. Doubly so in Master Duel, where we have access to the superior board breaker in Protoss. If it was a quick play, maybe it's worth considering. Do not play into Max C. If your opponent activates Max C in response to you activating Moye to summon a token, you make Qishao, search Blackout, set it, and pass turn. You do not want to give your opponent 3 extra draws with Longwan into Barone, especially if you're only getting 1 extra interaction. You're better off letting them start with only 7 cards, and you can try to counter what they have with Qishao plus Blackout and 5 cards in hand, which is still decent. Don't rely on Protoss. While Protoss is a very good card that can straight up win games on its own, it shouldn't be the end-all and be-all of the deck. Protoss would sometimes come at the cost of your follow-up because you're using Immersions or Circles to search it. It might even be dead in some games due to how unpredictable the best of 1 format is, thus you're not even guaranteed to encounter a dark deck. In formats where decks like Dragon Link, Tearlaments, or Sprites reign supreme, then it's amazing. But if the meta revolves around Kashtira or Rescue Ace in the future, then it won't be as good until turn 2 onwards. As I had stated before, try to keep in mind follow-up is important too, so don't always tunnel vision yourself into making Protoss into unknown matchups. So that's it for do's and don'ts. Now let's move on to the next part, the one that you've all been waiting for, the combos. We've arrived at the combos. Here's where you truly learn to play the deck. I'll be splitting this portion into 2 parts, one for basic combos for beginners, and another for advanced combos for those who want to improve their piloting skills. So let's get started with the basic combos. These are the ones that are really easy to pull off and remember, and they give you a good enough endboard without dedicating too many resources to it. So let's say you open just Emergence, and this is the only 1 card combo of the deck. You activate Emergence and you search Taya. You normal summon a Taya, use its effect to banish Emergence and summon a token. Then you synchro Taya and the token for Chi-Xiao. You go channeling 1 Chi-Xiao to search Blackout and channeling 2 Taya to dump Ashuna for next turn. Set Blackout and pass. We have a monster negate with Chi-Xiao and a pop 2 with Blackout. Next line I'm sure you're familiar with if you played Swordsoul before or ran into it on ladder. If you open Moye plus a reveal for her. You normal summon Moye, use her effect to reveal and summon a token. You synchro Moye plus the token to make Chi-Xiao, channeling 1 Chi-Xiao to grab Longwan, channeling 2 Moye to draw. Longwan pitch the Moye reveal to summon itself plus a token. Then you synchro Longwan plus the token to make either Qixing or Barone. We have a monster negate with Chi-Xiao, either an Omni negate with Barone, or 2 banishes with Qixing. You don't really want to make Chang'e going first unless you have Blackout. Even then, I still prefer Qixing. Next, if you open Ashuna and Circle. You special summon Ashuna, link Ashuna into Monk. Use Ashuna's effect from the graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Then you use Circle to tribute Adhara to search Moye. Use Adhara's effect from the graveyard to add back Ashuna. From then on, it's just the same line as before. Normal summon Moye, make Chi-Xiao, search Longwan, pitch, summon Qixing. Do remember that you're worm locked from Ashuna, so no Barone. Alright, now let's get into some lines that really utilize the Tenyis. Let's say you open Ashuna plus Vishuddha or Adhara. You special summon Ashuna, link Ashuna into Monk, special summon Vishuddha, use Ashuna's effect from the graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Synchro Vishuddha plus Adhara into Chi-Xiao. Now here's where you have a few options to search for Chi-Xiao, but don't forget to use Adhara's effect from graveyard to add back Ashuna first. You can add Longwan to pitch the Ashuna so you can make Qixing. You can add Moye and make Draco Berserker to get an extra draw. Regardless, you should be ending on at least a Chi-Xiao and another interaction. And this is all done without using a normal summon or your main deck Swordsouls. Now it's time to talk about the Chaofeng line. The way you get to Chaofeng is very similar to the previous line. But you should only do this if you have another way to get to Chi-Xiao. Once you get to the position where you have Vishuddha and Adhara on board, you synchro summon Boxia with those 2 instead. Use Boxia to target Monk and Adhara from graveyard to revive it. Synchro Boxia and Adhara into Chaofeng. Then you can proceed with your normal Swordsoul line to go into Chi-Xiao without fear of Nibiru, Valor, or Gamma. And that can get you to Qixing, Protoss, or Blackout. Bonus tip. This will rely on how Master Duel handles its toggles, so you can't really apply this in TCG or OCG. But if you see your opponent's board flashing after you summon a Tenyi, but there's no flashing after you summon Monk, then there's a very high chance your opponent has Imperm or Valor. In this case, try to bait it by making Chi-Xiao over Chaofeng. That way you at least end on an interruption instead of just Chaofeng into a potentially non-light deck. So that's it for the basic combos. Let's move on to the real stuff, the advanced combos. I'll be talking about the Denglong line first. You have to open Ashuna, Moye or Ecclesia, and a card to reveal for Moye. Activate Ashuna's effect to special summon it onto the field. Normal summon Moye, activate her effect by revealing an appropriate card from hand. At this point, your opponent will chain Infinite Impermanence or Valor, negating Moye's effect. Link Ashuna into Monk, then activate Ashuna's effect from graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Synchro Moye plus Adhara for Denglong. activate Moye's effect and draw 1 card. Activate Danglong's effect, sending Taya from deck to the graveyard. Link Monk and Danglong for Shaman. Activate Shaman's effect, pitching 1 card to summon Taya from graveyard. Activate Taya's effect, banishing Moye to summon a token on your field. Activate Adhara's effect, banishing itself to get back Moye in hand for next turn. Synchro Taya plus the token for Chixiao. Activate Taya's effect to send a Shuna from deck to graveyard. Note that you cannot activate Chixiao to search due to Shaman's restriction. It's a simple board, but it's still a relatively fine one through Imperm or Veiler. Now here's another simpler hand. If you open Moye plus Circle with no reveals from Moye, you still have a potential line. You normal summon Moye, no effect, and then you activate Circle from hand, tributing Moye to add a Shuna to hand. Activate a Shuna to special, and then link it into Monk. Activate a Shuna's effect from graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Link Adhara into another Monk. Activate Adhara's effect from graveyard, adding back to hand the Shuna we banish. Link both Monks into Shaman. Activate Shaman's effect, discarding a card, not a Shuna, to summon Moye from graveyard. Since now we have a card to reveal, we can activate her effect to show a Shuna to summon a token. Synchro Moye plus token into Chixiao. Activate Moye's effect to draw 1. Chixiao can't activate since we're under Shaman's effect lock. This is the exact same endboard as the previous line, but it's done with a very awkward hand, so it's still good, and it's still 1 monster negate. Now we have arrived at the Yazi plus Baxia line. You have to open a Shuna, Longwan, Moye, or Ecclesia as your normal summon. Normal summon Moye, activate her effect to reveal a Shuna. Then the opponent will chain Imperm to her, negating her effect. Then you activate Longwan's effect, discarding a Shuna from hand to summon itself plus a token. Activate a Shuna's effect from graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Synchro Moye plus token for Baxia, activate Moye's effect to draw 1 card. Synchro Longwan plus Adhara for Yazi. Activate Baxia's effect, destroying Yazi to revive Adhara from graveyard. Activate Yazi's effect from graveyard, summoning Taya from deck. Synchro Baxia plus Adhara for Chaofeng. Activate Taya's effect, banishing Longwan to summon a token on the field. Then you activate Adhara's effect from graveyard, adding back Longwan to hand. Synchro Taya plus token into Chixiao. Channeling 1 Chixiao, channeling 2 Taya. Taya can send a Shuna for follow-up, and Chixiao will add either Blackout or Emergence. If you add Blackout, set it plus whatever other cards you have, and that ends your turn. If you add Emergence, you use it to add Protoss and summon it onto the field and call it Dark. So your opponent cannot activate Light Monster's effect because of Chaofeng, and your opponent cannot summon Dark Monsters either because of Protoss. Now we can get into some combos with Vessel. Suppose you open Vessel plus Shatana. Note that Shatana could be any Tenyi instead. You special summon Shatana and link it into Monk. Use Vessel to send a Shuna to the graveyard and add Adhara to hand. Now if you notice, we are in the exact same situation as the line I had talked about before. We have Adhara in hand, a Monk on the field, and a Shuna in your graveyard. So you just do the exact same line as before and make Chixiao with Adhara and Vishuda. For the next line, let's say you open Vessel plus the Shuna plus Taya. You special summon the Shuna and link it into Monk. Use Vessel to send Protoss to the graveyard and add Adhara or Vishuda to hand. Special summon Vishuda from hand, activate a Shuna from the graveyard to special summon Adhara. Synchro summon Baxia and activate Baxia to destroy the Monk to special summon back Adhara. Synchro Baxia plus Adhara for Chaofeng, now you're insulated from Nib and Veiler. Normal summon Taya. Taya's effect banishes Protoss from your graveyard and receive your token. Activate Adhara from graveyard to add Protoss back to your hand. Synchro summon into another Baxia, activate Taya's effect to send Moye from the deck to the graveyard. Activate Baxia to pop itself and special summon Moye from the graveyard to reveal Protoss from hand and receive another token. Then you synchro Moye plus the token into Chixiao, channeling 1 Chixiao, channeling 2 Moye. With only Vessel plus the Shuna plus Taya in hand, this is a little gamble. Depending on what you draw through Moye, you can end on a different board. If Moye draws a discard for Longwan, then Chixiao will search Longwan. Longwan can then discard special summon itself plus a token, then you synchro summon for Qixing. If Moye does not draw a Longwan discard, then you search Blackout with Chixiao. And then you banish 3 monsters from your graveyard with different attributes for Protoss, call Dark with it. This is a field containing Chaofeng, Protoss, Chixiao, and Qixing or Blackout. Very formidable. There are only 2 lines left that I want to talk about, and these are important, so keep these in mind. First, we got a double 10 line. You have to open a Shuna, Emergence, and any reveal for Moye. Special summon a Shuna, link a Shuna into Monk. Use a Shuna's effect from graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Activate Emergence to search Taya. Normal summon Taya. Use Taya's effect to banish Emergence and get a token. Use Emergence effect to modulate Adhara to a level 2. Synchro Taya plus a token into Boxia. Use Taya's effect from graveyard to dump Moye from deck. Activate Boxia targeting Monk and Moye from graveyard to revive her. Activate Moye to reveal and summon a token. Synchro Boxia and a level 2 Adhara into Qixing. Use Adhara from graveyard to add back Ashuna. Synchro Moye plus token into Qixao. Now there are 3 trigger effects here, Moye, Qixao, and Qixing. Here's where you can get a little creative with chainlinks. By this point, you know your opponent would most likely not have Ash, otherwise they would have used it on Emergence. This means that you can afford to put Qixao on Chainlink 3. If you already have Longwan access, then you should put Qixao as Chainlink 3 to deck it by searching Blackout, then Chainlink 1 plus 2 with Moye plus Qixing. Otherwise, I do Chainlink 1 Qixao because I am more likely to find Longwan than Blackout off of the 2 draws from Qixing and Moye. If I do happen to find one of them, Qixao will search the other. Longwan discard Ashuna that you added back to summon itself plus a token. Synchro Longwan plus token into Changying. This board is incredibly strong even without Barone because Qixing and Qixao can trigger Changying very easily. Not only that, you drew 2 cards off of Qixing and Moye, meaning you probably drew more hand traps or follow-up for next turn. Now this is most likely the strongest line of the deck. This is a stronger version of the double 10 line I had just elaborated on. You have to open Ashuna, Longwan, a discard for Longwan, Emergence, and Ecclesia or Taya. Special summon Ashuna, pitch the Longwan discard to summon him plus a token, and make Barone with those 2. Link Ashuna into Monk. Use Ashuna's effect from graveyard to summon Adhara from deck. Use Emergence to search Protoss. Normal summon a Taya. Use Taya's effect, banishing Emergence from graveyard to summon a token. Use Emergence banish effect to modulate Adhara to a level 2. Make Boxia with Taya plus a token. Use Taya's effect from graveyard to dump Moye. Use Boxia popping Monk on the field to revive Moye from graveyard. Use Moye to reveal Protoss in hand to summon a token. Make Qixing with Boxia plus a level 2 Adhara. Banish 3 monsters from your graveyard including Taya to summon Protoss. Use Protoss and call Dark. Use Adhara from graveyard to add back Taya for guaranteed follow-up. Make Qixao with Moye plus a token. Go Chainlink 1 Qixing, Chainlink 2 Moye, Chainlink 3 Qixao to add Blackout and then draw 2. Set Blackout and pass. This is an Omni negate with Barone, 2 banishes with Qixing, a monster negate with Qixao, 2 pops with Blackout, and your opponent cannot special summon dark monsters. You also have Taya for follow-up and 2 extra draws. Realistically, not a lot of decks can out this board and win on the same turn, meaning Taya will help you clean up next turn. So that's it for the combos. I hope by this point in the video, you've learned almost everything you need to know about how to play Swordsoul. So let's just wrap this guide up. I hope that this video was informative enough for you to know about the ins and outs of the deck. This deck is very complex, unlike what most people might think. The floor is low, but the ceiling is very high, and there's a lot of intricacies in terms of lines you need to think about. To end this video off, I would like to give a few shoutouts. Of course, I couldn't have done this alone. A good chunk of folks over at the Swordsoul channel in the Master Duel Meta Discord have helped out with the script and provided feedback. But most importantly, I want to give a shout out to Pack TCG. His videos on Swordsoul were the ones that made me fall in love with the deck thanks to his technical play. This video is meant as a sort of thank you to him for inspiring me and countless others to really learn the deck. And I hope this video will inspire more of you to pick the deck up and make your way up the Master Duel ladder. If you really like to learn more about the technical play of Swordsoul, I really recommend the Inside the Mind of Pack series. He gives very detailed explanations as to how he sequences his plays, how to use the resources in his hand to their maximum potential, or how to bait out hand traps. The videos might be a bit long, but it's all worth it in the end. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.